In recovery. That's what he's got going on.
What is the, between that, there obviously some pictures.
That, you'll love this. My mother-in-law says that she is a native Hawaiian, and I said she's a native Cuban because nobody really knows. And so that's what she's just sitting there. It's a controversial piece.
I love it. That's awesome.
And then be the change you wish to see in the world.
Of course.
Every day.
Every day. So we are right at 9 my time, and we and it's Monday, and it's been an odd weekend. So I don't fully know what to expect this morning as far as attendance, but we've been getting around 30 consistently. So they'll pop on when they pop on. And I made a couple hurried scours of my bookshelves, and I could not find your husband's book, but I would love for you to tell us about that as well. So first, introduce yourself and tell us where you are, most importantly.
Physically?
Yes, physically.
Okay. So my name is Elizabeth Curry, and I'm a MAPS coach presently in the world. I'm also a wife and a mom, and I am in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Okay. And so it is mountain time there?
It's 10 o'clock, yeah.
All right.
Got an hour on you.
Yeah. So thank you for saying yes to coming on. And
thank you for asking. Are you kidding?
Yeah. From the moment we met, I've kind of felt a kindred spirit, and I didn't know why. But, you know, figuring out that our lives have had somewhat similar paths, I think that must be why. That Agreed. And I think our whys are, you know, be the change you want to see in the world. Our purposes are very similar.
Yeah, you and I have always had this invisible magnet that just draws us to each other, no matter what room we're in.
And you've got to listen, pay attention when that happens, right?
Always, always.
So as a MAPS coach, who do you work with? Who's your ideal client? Because we always want to make sure we're in these Zooms. If you're not in active production, we can't send you referrals. We can at least maybe send you some of the perfect clients.
Sweet. So ideally, I like working with the CEOs. That's my world.
Nice shirt.
That's a different reason for today. And yet, yes, here it is. It's what's on my mind a lot, Ashley. You know, I've always had a passion for growing businesses and growing organizations, growing the people that are in those organizations. And it starts at the top. Leadership starts at the top. And right now, pick your news channel, pick your story. It's all about leadership. And I want to work with the people that I can help to have the biggest, kind of like a trickle down effect. You know, you empower at the top and it just works its way down. And I've been in real estate, this is 15 years for me, always at KW, always
all
looked at Gary.
15 years?
All 15 years.
Good for you.
You should see my MREA book.
Mine too, the pages are falling out.
Yeah.
Okay, so CEOs, big teams, small teams, does it matter to you?
I tend to have a real sweet spot in that middle, and it doesn't matter as far as size, it's really about your organization. You know, do you have that org chart where it's yourself as a CEO, you've got some support staff, you've got some producers, and I'm focused in on profitability and wealth building. And so I don't really go by how many people you have in your organization. Let's talk about why you want your profit goal and the role that I can play to help you grow yourself and the people that you work with to get there.
Awesome. Awesome. And coaches that speak like that, I think that understand that everything that you do is going to come out of a sense of purpose, have also lived that, right? I don't think you get there without the experience of it. So,
oh man.
Whew, yeah. So let's go there. Tell us your story, dear.
Oh, Ashley, gosh, how much time did you allot for us today?
We got an hour.
Well, I love you for asking. And every time I think about my story, our story, I get sweaty palms, I get excited inside, because it wasn't until I looked at our story that I went, oh my gosh, no way. Because life gets going, right? Life happens to you and you just keep going. And so in our story really starts in 2005 when my husband was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I refer to that as our snow globe moment. Like your world is shaken and you get put down on that desk and you're like, which way is up? Got no clue. You know, at the time, he was at the height of his career. So he was in broadcasting all his life, journalism and broadcasting. And things just weren't right. He was missing things. Standing and keeping his balance was a challenge. And
When you
we
say
were
he was
living
missing
life.
things, was he missing things intellectually?
Intellectually, you know, keep in mind that this man was responsible for every second of a major radio station in Miami. And when you're responsible for every single second, having something go or having something miss was just not like him. Like, this man was on his A game all of the time, right? We would be eating dinner and the radio's on in the background because I know his left ear has got to pay attention to what's happening next, you know? And so you live that life, and he had been doing this for 30 plus years by the time that he got diagnosed. However, what I love about this moment is, you know, we were living life at its fullest, right? We had a beautiful house on Don Shula's golf course. Our kids were flourishing. We're a blended family. So for us, that was like surviving was a lot, right? And then this snow globe moment happens to you. And you just go, I personally just went into it like an autopilot of, what do I need to do? Where's his diagnosis? Where's his care? At the time, they were telling us that Florida wasn't good for MS patients, so they wanted us to consider moving. Colorado was home for him. My husband was born and raised here. So for him, that was I'm just gonna go home deal. And it seemed like the logical, easy thing to do, Ashley. And we just went into that autopilot. All right, put the house on the market, get the doctors in order, just go, 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 go. And it was
That's
as
where
we were
fight or
moving.
flight comes out, right? I mean, that.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. When I think back at that moment, it wasn't and you're very kind to mention his book, it wasn't until I read his manuscript that I actually cried. And I went, what?
Over all those years?
Well, all of those years, because here's the deal, right? There's a part of me that was like, you've got to get through this. You've got to get him through this. You've got to get your family through this. Our daughter was 2 years old when he got diagnosed. There was a whole lot of, I don't break down and woe is me. I am just like, suit up your boots, get going. You've got something you've got to go do.
Yeah.
And when I read his manuscript and I realized that the years of my daughter growing up, they weren't like that.
Yeah.
She's 16 now.
Wow. It does go fast, especially when you're just doing everything you can to sustain, right?
Yeah.
And you did way more than sustain. You guys are thriving. You are living a life by design to the greatest extent you can, right?
Well, here's what I'll tell you about that. When you invited me to talk with you, I'm a big journaler, always have been. Since I was a little girl, I'm a big, big journaler. And I said, you know, get down to the 20%. You're not going to have days to talk to Ashley and years to catch up on stuff. Get down to that 20%, right? That might be the coach in me just a little bit. And as I was honing in on this, where I really got down to is the life that real estate in general has created for us. So imagine that we're making our trek from beautiful Palm Beach, Miami, Florida, where you have your palm trees and humidity and sand, and I'm headed west, and you know, I'm literally, picture the minivan, right? The kid, the dog, the bird, the whole 9 yards, right? And we're headed west. And my husband and I started having this dialogue about, what are we going to do next? Right? We knew that he had a flourishing career. Finances were not top of mind. However, we knew something had to happen because you couldn't.
And let me break just to get clarity. What when he was diagnosed with MS, was his broadcasting career essentially over? It
was. He chose it out of the simplicity that once he realized that he could not keep those details in place, he said, you know what? I'm at the peak of my career. I've brought this radio station to the best ratings it had ever seen. If ever you look back in life, his radio name was Kid Curry, and it was Power 96 was this radio station in Miami, Florida, and he broke records, which is probably also why we get along so well. There's a little bit of,
I think so.
okay. And so once he said, you know what, this can't get any better, and I'm not getting any better. So let me put this in perspective. The part that I glossed over was the fact that he started having problems in January of 2005. It wasn't officially diagnosed until May of 2005. In those 5 months, he ran a red light because he couldn't see the color red. He fell multiple times. Once down the stairs with our daughter when she was an infant.
Wow.
And there's all these things happening, and diagnosis and medicines and red tape. You want to get me on a soapbox, let's talk about healthcare. And so that's what sparked the conversation from the East Coast to the West Coast was, what are we going to do now? Because we knew that we had enough finances to where we were going to be okay, The unknown though, Ashley, that part of, oh, wait a minute, you have a pre-existing condition, and oh yeah, you want to have those gadgets and those things that help you with life. Oh,
That
gee,
aren't covered by insurance.
they're not covered by insurance.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, okay, my core, I was a paralegal when I met him. Loved being in the profession, helping family law out. You'll love this one. When I went to go interview for my first attorney, she said to me, I have 3 departments: bankruptcy, real estate, and family law. And I said to her, I don't like numbers, so I'm not going to do bankruptcy. Real estate's too unpredictable. Don't put me there.
Yeah.
In the thick of unpredictability, right? What can we do to bring income to the house that doesn't necessarily take away from my life and my schedule, because he was such an unknown. The amount of doctor's appointments and the tests and the physical therapy and everything that was following, I needed flexibility. That's why I got into real estate, for the flexibility. You love that? Have you had a nickel for every time?
Yep. Yep.
So after that, I said, okay, well, I'm going to go get my real estate license, and we're just going to figure this out. And that was the beginning in 06, by the time that we made it into Colorado. And I've not looked back. And when I talk about real estate changed our lives, because it was through real estate that if he needed to have devices so he could drive with hand controls because he no longer has use of his legs, that's $6,000 that insurance doesn't believe you need, by the way, because that's silly. You don't need to drive places and get anywhere. And so real estate became this thing that we were going to do for our quality of life. And here I am 15 years later, and I still have to scratch my head and thank Gary Keller and thank KW and thank the career that real estate has given me to afford him the kind of life that he has right now, where he's not told no. He's told, let me just figure this out. I'll get back to you.
And I don't know a lot about MS, but it's related to what my partner has. So I've done some reading on it, and it can go in spurts, right? He could, and I don't know, I haven't asked recently the details, but when it's bad, what does that look like? Just to give people an idea, because it's not always observable.
No, one of my favorite saying is, oh, but you look so good, right? All right, let's peel back that onion. Let's open up the hood and then let's talk about it. So at its core, MS, multiple sclerosis, is when the melanin that we have in our brain, it's a coating that protects the nerves that are in our brain. The melanin gets eaten away. And wherever it gets eaten away, wherever those nerves are at, is what gets affected. And essentially, it ends up looking like plaque in the brain, just like we would get plaque in our heart if we had bad heart condition. They get plaque in their brain, and it essentially eats up the nerves wherever that melanin was exposed. So there are no 2 patients of MS that are alike. And that's why the variance is how it affects young and older women and men. There is no 2 cases where you can go, oh, this is what it's looking like.
Which, by the way, leads to ineffective treatments or no treatment, because it's not the same with everybody.
No. So our 15 years of, hey, do you want to get poked with this? Hey, do you want to get poked with that? Hey, you know what we haven't tried just yet? And he walks around, because we also have a very light, humorous way about this. And he says, just if you tell me I need to eat dirt, just tell me I need to eat dirt. Right? However, we were the ones that pioneered robotics to help him with his drop foot to attempt to make a step when he lost that. Every gadget out there, Ashley, you can imagine we've had one way or another. And at the end of the day, for him, it is whatever has been permanent is just permanent for him. So he is 95% of the time in a wheelchair. And we make sure that he's got all the tools. He drives handless, or feetless, I should say, with his hand controls, kind of like a video game. But every day is different, and no 2 days are alike. And I always tell folks a good day is when he can get out of bed. Yeah. That's it.
So shift gears. We can go back there. So you're the breadwinner. You're parenting. You're co-parenting still, but probably more taking the lead on that. And I'm sure attempting to help your husband on a day-to-day basis, because if you can't get out of bed, what are you going to do? So tell us what Elizabeth's professional life looks like with all those layers.
Well, professionally, it's very focused. I am not going to sit here and tote bumper stickers or taglines. I do believe that when you get purposeful about why you're doing what you're doing, it becomes very clear as to what you need to do every day. And so I'm a big on a planner. This mess behind me is part of my Monday morning ritual. I break out my 5-year, I break out my 1 year. Where am I this month? It's June 1. So it's time to look at that stuff. And we still have family goals. There are things that we still want to do. Being diagnosed with a illness and a disease that does not have a cure does not mean that that is a death sentence. And so we have always been about, where is the ability in our disability, right? How do we do the things that we want to do because we know what life was like pre-diagnosis? And so professionally, I'm laser focused in on who I want to work with and why I want to work with them. And they are the engine behind my one thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm guessing you don't keep clients in your schedule who don't actually do it.
You've got to come up with some pretty stiff excuses to tell me why you didn't get something done. That's all I'm going to say, right? Because I go back to this, I joke with folks that, behind this door, there's a certain level of chaos, right? And yet I still show up. I am still present here with you. And so tell me a better
I don't think that's a
story.
joke. I think that's a grand example.
Yeah. Tell me another story.
Yeah. All right. So go back. So Miami and Fort Collins are slightly different, I'm guessing. I never put that two together until you said it. That's a tremendous cultural shift. Again, another layer in all this uncertainty. How'd you pick Fort Collins, and how this is an assumption, but I have some friends in Fort Collins. You're a little bit faster paced and probably a lot more globally minded than anybody in Colorado. So how did that transition go?
Yeah. So go back to flight or fright, right? I knew enough about Colorado. I had been coming out once a quarter. My husband was very purposeful about seeing his family. So from Florida, I had been coming out once a quarter. However, and here's where I get to just have some fun with you, right? I am a Cuban from Miami. So
I'm sure everybody can, but I can hear it. I'm like, oh yeah, we're going.
So the first time I come to meet my in-laws, I truly got out of the car and I just kind of looked around. And I was like, oh, Elizabeth, what'd you get yourself into? Because my Miami shoes didn't work the same either, by the way. There was just a whole lot of things that did not translate over. And yet I knew that I loved coming to Colorado. I don't ski because, again, I'm Cuban. So
did you ever visit in the winter before you moved there?
Once. And you know what? It was one of those, oh my gosh, look at the snow. It looks so pretty, right? Yeah. I still wear 2 pairs of socks 15 years later. A good friend of mine turned me on to alpaca socks. They keep you warmer. So I am now that person. However, what I appreciated was the difference in culture. So let me give you a little bit of a perspective, right? Our blended family meant that we had 3 kids that came with the marriage. Marriage came with 3 kids, a parrot, and an accountant. Okay, those are the terms.
An accountant?
Yeah, he had him for life. It was part of our deal. He was like, hey, listen, this is my baggage. This is what it comes with, and it included an account, right? Whatever, we all have something weird, right? And then we have this life over here where I was a paralegal when we first met, and our kids were in Miami school systems where you average about 32 to 35 kiddos per teacher. So classrooms were tight. And our kids were smart kiddos and they were excelling. And it came to, all right, either we homeschool our kids or we're going to end up busing them for the education they need. So at that point, my career turned from being a paralegal to being a homeschool mom, stepmom to these kiddos, because these kiddos were not my kiddos, which was a lot of fun because that meant that from a blended family perspective, we had a cool relationship to think that the kiddos' mom was like, yeah, their stepmom can homeschool them.
Sure. Yeah.
She's a cool lady in and of itself. She's a cool lady. However, she wasn't primary. My husband was. So we had custody of the kiddos, and that's what we did for a long time. So you look at life in Miami, when we came to Colorado, there's this thing called charter schools. Phenomenal for the school system. Yeah. And it was a perfect transition for my kids to go from a homeschool environment into a nice charter school environment where they all, 15 years later, managed to excel really well. And so I started then looking at the quality of life aspect of this. And Ashley, being honest with you, I was on last on that list. It didn't matter to me what I was looking for. I saw on the surface, my husband can breathe better. He has more energy here. My kids are going to be in a better school system. Pull up your bootstraps and do what needs to be done. Right now, I will tell you that when we came, it was October 2005 when we went from Miami to Colorado. I looked
just before winter.
Well,
Sorry.
So that's a great segue, actually. So picture the red minivan, right, with one of those little tubes on top, storage things, right? Mm-hmm. And because my husband said, we may hit winter on the way, bring Miami stuff, bring sweaters, so that if we do get in trouble along the way, we at least have some layers to put on. Well, a Miami winter is not the same as a Colorado winter. So here comes this Cuban with what I refer to as my J-Lo jacket. It had fuzz and fur, and it was velvety. And I got out in Colorado, and I thought I was some hot stuff. And they all looked at me, and I bet you that they thought, oh my gosh, she's not from here. And actually, that was my move from Miami to Colorado. She's not from here. Now I've got it, though. Now I've got it. I'm no longer J-Lo in Colorado. I've got it now.
That is awesome. And the homeschooling thing, that's pretty amazing. You probably have helped some clients out during COVID who have had to be homeschool teachers who never signed up for it. So how old are the kids now?
Oh boy, here we go. So the part I haven't mentioned is my husband is 22 years my senior. I always enjoyed a smart, mature man, and we'll leave that at that. So my oldest is 29. My son is 26. There's an 18-year-old and then our 16-year-old.
Okay. And during this time, this period of time that we've all been shelter in place, how many of those are in the home with you?
Just the two. So my daughter, who is 16, and then my son, who's the 23, 24-year-old.
Okay. And prior to this, you were used to working from home, right?
Yeah, since I became a full-time MAPS coach 5 years ago, I have worked from home. So working from home was not new to me. Having them all home in this time period was new to me.
So let's go there, because we've all got to learn some really special things over the last couple months. How did you initially kind of cope with that?
So ours started a little earlier because part of what I have become on the side is a little scientist guru, because you have to learn what the doctors are telling you. You can't just take things for face value. And we've had and
you have to be way more proactive because already a compromised system, right?
Yeah, proactive, and don't ever think that just because your doctor knows you, that your doctor knows you, right? We've got some really great doctors and specialists, and yet there has been a time or two where I've said, that's not his medication, or that's not for him. So being an advocate on the other side of what the patient is not able to cognitively pay attention to has always been like one of my little side jobs, right? And so when we started seeing what was happening, I said to my husband, it doesn't make sense for you to be out. Now, he did not think that that was exciting, because you tell the man that already can't do much, that he can't do the little he can do, and that took a conversation. So for example, he's the guy that goes to Whole Foods every day and gets fresh fish. It's what he likes to do. He can still cook.
It's part of his routine, right?
It's part of his routine. It's who he is. He likes to do it. That was the first thing that got shut down. So for the Curry household, this is week 12 for us. And he is very limited. The only places that I allow him, I know that sounds terrible, and yet that's who I am. We go to Whole Foods on Friday morning. They have hours for folks that have pre-existing conditions or are more susceptible, and we go in before anybody even really hits the store. And that's his outing. So for 12 weeks, we have been doing this. So in the beginning, he took to going Facebook Live. He's a broadcaster at heart. He said, I got to go talk to my people. I got to go tell them, right? He was there on the air when September 11th happened. I could not keep him away from talking to people. And as soon as he realized that it was Facebook Live for him, he was out there and he did that. So
awesome.
That was his kind of like, this is what I'm going to do during this time period. Then I put my kids on a schedule. I said, so listen, what's happening upstairs doesn't stop happening. And as a matter of fact, it's got to happen like it's never happened before. So I am loud. This is me on a normal volume having a conversation. Can you imagine when I'm excited about something?
We could probably hear you here.
And so my schedule is my schedule, and you guys, you're old enough to figure things out. And so my daughter started painting. My son started reading more. They too found some of these creative resources that we're seeing out there where people were just, what am I going to do with my time? How can I do something that will add and complement to my life?
Okay. And so was it all perfectly smooth?
Of course not. No, because here's the other thing, Ashley. Mary Poppins doesn't live here. There's no such thing as perfect, all right? She is not in my house. So it wasn't. And there were times where, here's where I allowed the authenticity to live, when my daughter would come in and grab her homework off the printer, right? Because she's Zoom schooling, right? And so my clients are sitting there with kids crawling all over them because this is the world we live in. I was no different.
Yep.
And it was important. If we're going to be in partnership with people, then we need to be authentic.
Yep. Oh, 100%. 100%. So that's a good segue too. So go back now, put your caregiver hat on. Because we inhabit those worlds, right? Yeah. What have been some of the self-care items or coping mechanisms you've leaned on? Because, you know, you get this diagnosis as a couple and both of your worlds change dramatically. And you obviously have to carry more weight than you had probably set up and planned for. So there's a lot of layers there. Unpack it how you will, but how'd you manage that?
Yeah. So at its very core, it starts at a conversation, probably the first few sentences I had with my father-in-law over 20 years ago. So my husband and I will celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary this September. Okay.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. It's a long time, 20 years. 1999, I came to meet my in-laws before we got married. And my father-in-law at the time was in a wheelchair because he was a police officer and he had a head-on collision and he lost his leg. Long story, okay? But he rolls up to me. So just think about where I am now to where I was then and not even knowing this.
Yep. 360-degree circle.
And I get chills thinking about it because I was as naive and dumb as I was 20 years ago, right? And my father-in-law rolls up next to me and he puts his hands on me and he says, "Darling, what do you think you're doing?" And he was referring to blended family. My husband is older than I context.
Yeah. People get really wigged out about that age difference thing.
Listen, I promise you, it's all up here. We make each other laugh and we're good for each other. That's all that matters, right?
There you go.
And I looked at him and I said, "Mr. Curry, don't you know that I'm built for this?"
So
now, at the time,
you were quite confident 20 years ago.
Because I'm Cuban, right? and here's what I mean by that. Ashley, my grandmother left her country with 2 kiddos at the age of 3 and 5 and could not look back, right? She left with the clothes on her back. My grandfather had been incarcerated because he didn't follow government ways. And she was headed to a new country without her husband, without her belongings, to a home she always knew. So when I think about things like I am built for this.
Big perspective. Yeah.
I saw hard growing up.
Yeah.
This is now, but there was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in my life a couple of times, sometimes not even a 2-bedroom, right? So the caregiver part of me was always there. There's a certain level, I call it DNA grit. I came with a certain level of grit. And it happens to be the world that you and I have managed to live in allows us to just kind of up that grit on a daily basis.
Right. And how do you not lose yourself in that and career? And it's not always easy to stay focused on what I loved. You said that your 5-year, 1-year plan is behind you. That can, for a lot of people, get lost in the I just need to cope with right now. So how have you been able to keep that future visioning, which really it's a hopeful future visioning, right? When sometimes we're not in a hopeful place.
Yeah. Some part of me thinks that I didn't know any better, going back to that survival piece. Mm-hmm. You know, the first battle that we faced was the fact that my husband was in a corporate job with corporate health insurance. And I learned awfully quick about pre-existing conditions, how we were going to get him covered. So imagine this for just a second. We're being diagnosed in Florida, and it's that snow globe moment. And I knew we were going to move to Colorado because he couldn't continue to sustain it. Humidity is bad for folks with MS. It brings down their energy levels. And I knew that Colorado was inevitable. I just didn't know when. So I thought, you know what? I better get myself incorporated because I'm going to do something. Mm-hmm. And Ashley, that was my solution for the pre-existing condition. Because you come to Colorado, corporation can have group insurance. His pre-existing condition went away. I give you that as an example because I treated everything in our life from that point was, okay, this is the obstacle. What's the workaround? How do I get it done? And when you're in that mode, there isn't time to, you know, I've had friends that say to me, when do you break down? I said, when is there time to break down? There's no time to break down.
Yeah.
These things were always very, very important. We survived 3 aneurysms 2 years ago. There is not a moment in our 15, 20 years together that I can stop because it's been 15 since he was diagnosed.
Right.
There's not a moment where I can stop and think, I had the luxury of getting up in a corner and balling up and just crying.
Yeah.
Which is why I share with you that it wasn't until he read the book that I went, oh my gosh. I didn't know. I had forgotten. And I didn't realize.
That amnesia is interesting, isn't it?
Very much so, because you're just there in that mode. You're there in survival mode. When he started having consecutive surgeries for one thing or another, I got him a set of dog tags that has my cell phone number on it because my fear was losing him behind those doors. You know what those doors are when they say, all right, you need to wait over there, right?
Yep.
And these dog tags said, this is our gig. I'll wait for you to come home. And like that, we've been living 15 years. So I don't feel like I have the luxury of falling apart or breaking down. Now, what I will tell you is this. You do need a certain amount of strength and tribe and people. And I can tell you the people that I've had in my corner saying, you know what, I'm here for you. It's okay. And I have also loosened as the years gone by. I allow just a little bit of a tear up every once in a while. And I go, okay, let's go. Suck it up. Time to move on. Let's go. Because there's always something to do.
Well, and you choose that too, right? I think without that always something to do, we'd probably be in trouble.
Yeah. And that something to do actually lasts us forever, right? Because we have always been the kind of folks that say, okay, what are we going to do next, right? When we purchased our home in Florida with our first family house is what we called it, right? Kids all came together. There's always been something to focus in on. And living this life of inability, I don't say to folks, no, I can't travel because my husband's in a wheelchair. I say, I can travel. I just need a caregiver, someone who's got a little more muscle than me in case he gets stuck in a cobblestone road and I can't get that wheelchair out because that's happened, right? So you look for ways. And we still want big things out of our life. We're not done yet.
Yeah.
So you do have to keep 5-year and that 3-year and that 1 year in front of you. And when things are really, really hard like they are now, because like I said earlier, pick the channel, pick the news story, right? Yeah. I almost don't feel like we don't have problems.
Oh no, we're getting a big perspective check right now. And I think one of the most powerful things I've heard you say, and I'm just going to go right there because I think it needs to be succinct enough that people take it with them. The people who have had the hardest problem in this COVID time, and likely they're the same ones who are going to have a challenge if they're losing a business because of the riots or anything else. When your current purpose is taken away and you wake up the next day and you don't have a purpose, that's a problem. You need to find something to focus on and go do, right? Be, do, have. The doing allows us to be or get back to our being. So if the purpose is taken away, if your daily routine is all messed up and you don't redefine a purpose, you're going to be lost and you're going to be depressed and it's going to be harder to get up every single day. Find that purpose.
Yeah. And I love what you talk about around this purpose and the why, right? Because it hasn't changed for me. And some things are different, you know, I won't pretend that they're not. You know, I live in a world right now where I can't say to him enough, you know, wash your hands. We saw some friends yesterday and I was like, I love you guys, but you guys still have to be 6 feet apart because there isn't a vaccine yet, right? And my world is too different for me to, and I even thought about it because there are friends, you know, eating out and having restaurants, and I would love to live that life, except that that's not an option for us, right?
Well,
And being able,
I'm
yeah,
going to check your thinking. Yes, it is an option, and you're choosing the smart option.
absolutely, absolutely. As far as I'm concerned, it's putting him too much at risk, and I'm just not willing to take that risk.
Just take your power in that choice back. You have a choice.
Thank you, Ashley. I will take it back.
So how is he right now?
Yeah.
And do you have you hired caregivers in the house, or is it you and the kids?
So it is me, because the caregiver I had, she had to go out to her outside world, is what I call it, and she had to go serve a bigger purpose. And so it has been me for 12 weeks, which adds another layer because I do believe in leverage. I think leverage is a beautiful thing. You and I both know that when you have all these little stints of hospital stays and diagnoses, and you have to keep I tell folks in my world all the time, your oxygen mask has to go on first. I believe that. I don't just say it, I believe it. And so being able to be in that place where, what's my routine like? What am I doing every day for my mind, my body, my soul, so that I can be the person that my world needs of me? And that includes being his caregiver. So I am the lady that works him right now, literally, because if his legs don't move on his own, so that's on me, right?
You get your workout too. I know how that is.
Do. Actually, which is why I box, girl. That's my go-to. That's why I box.
We have a gentleman on here who has Parkinson's, and his name's Brian. You can see his arms. He is boxing up to, I think, an hour and a half a day.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So you taking care, and that's what I was trying to go to. I needed to ask a better question. Because I didn't assume that you were facing emotional meltdowns all the time. But how do you care for your mind, body, and soul so that you can show up as that powerful, in charge woman?
Yeah, it starts out with my faith, right? And my faith is knowing that for 15 years, he's taken care of me, and he'll continue to take care of me. I truly believe that you are not given anything that you cannot handle. And going back to those moments of breakdown, I was always like, all right, who do you need me to be in order to get through this? Because the other option is—
Great question. You all should write that down. What do you need me to be to get through this? That's a great question.
The alternative is not an option.
Well, it is. Again, it is. Give yourself kudos for making the right choice.
I just won't, to me, I will not settle for defeat. I will not settle to have a diagnosis label who we are or how we live our lives. I will not allow it, right? And so that is me at my core, right? When I told you that I came with a certain grit and DNA, that's me at my core. And then I do the things that I need to do every day. And this is every day, actually. It is reading within my faith. It is reading to grow myself as a business person. It is, who am I talking to, right? Who are my people that I surround myself with? It's the ability to write, because you got to journal it. It's got to come out somewhere. You tend to make sense after a while, by the way, if you listen to your own thoughts and ask yourself the right questions, right? And then the working out piece. The reason I chose boxing is because his surgery, well, I love to hit things, yes. And his surgery 3 years ago showed me that I was not strong enough. I didn't have enough upper strength. And so I thought, this man's not going to get any lighter, because he just likes to eat. And so I figured, okay.
Well, to be fair, he can't walk.
and yet, you know, if I've got to do the heavy lifting, if you will, get stronger. And so this July 4th will be 2 years that I got into boxing, and I've not let up.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us about him. What does his life look like now? Obviously, Facebook Lives, I'm going to have to check it out. I'm sure he's a riot.
Disclaimer, I have wanted him to put a crawl that said Elizabeth Curry did not approve this content, okay? That is
I'm going to love it. It's going to be awesome.
And here's the deal. He's always been a journalist, right? And so I will never take away his voice or his opinion. There are very few things that we have just enough of a, hey, honey, you know what, let's just not talk about it. They're minor, though. They're minor. He is just a broadcaster, so he's very raw, and I'm like, knock yourself out, you do you. That's what got you to where you're at, right? What he is now I'm going to flip the coin on you. He is my support. He is my rock.
Yeah.
I do what I do because he pushes me to do it. because he's that guy that I love him. He feeds me 2 hours like a newborn. Every 2 hours, I have a snack, I have a meal, I have a protein, I have something. He knows I run a very high schedule, so he's my protein guy, right? And because he's got hand controls, he drives the 16-year-old around where she needs to go. She's an equestrian. She's got a social life. Slow at driving, that's a whole different deal, a whole different conversation. And so it's him. So I'm chatting with you, and he's already been to the barn twice to drop her off and get stuff to her. And so he is my guy. I could not do what I do if it weren't for the things that he does.
So how does he keep his mindset in check? You've been able to observe it, right? And I'm sure when you get that diagnosis, and I think almost everybody probably goes into a moment of panic, like, what does this mean? And some don't come out of that moment. He obviously has. He's as tough as nails, just like you are.
Yeah.
What has been his process in dealing with that? As I'm assuming, total assumption, but you get trapped further and further and further inside this shell, and obviously maximize what you can do, but that there's a psychological challenge typically that comes with that.
Yeah. Early on, I think he lived a life of gratitude where he thought this could have been worse. We met, so when my husband got diagnosed, he literally had turned 50 years of age when he got diagnosed. And within a few months of our diagnosis, we met a gentleman that at the age of 22 lost the ability to move his arms and move his legs. And so our perspective was always, we've already been there and done that. We had a really good life, right? We honeymooned in Paris. He traveled wherever he wanted to go. We did not for one. Now, what I will tell you that in 15 years, there have been moments where I've said, where are you? You seem like you've gone distant on me, and I've been able to drag him out with, there's still me on the other side of this.
Yeah.
We've had young kids, there's still life on the other side of this. And I am very grateful that his DNA, where he has come into, that fighter that you talk about, he's never let himself go so far that we couldn't bring him back out.
Awesome. And it also sounds like he has a purpose, right? He's getting up. He's going when he can, when he's allowed to, going to Whole Foods for fish and taking your daughter. I mean, I just love that. You pick a purpose and go. It will keep you in motion, and it will keep you in a good mental spot. Yeah. So here we are now with this new layer of violence nationwide. And by the way, for everybody who's here, we're going to have an interesting conversation on Wednesday. Emmerich Peace is going to be our guest. If you don't know Emmerich, he's been a leader in KW for many, many years. And the only person I thought of within our company who was that much of a leader in the African-American community. He asked me years ago to create with him an African-American alliance. And I said, okay. Anyway, he's going to be on Wednesday, and he's just an awesome dude. What do you see next? What are you telling your clients now, preparing as we come out of COVID? Most of the markets I'm in, they're roaring back, and yet this is a new layer. So how are you addressing your clients this week?
Run your race, right? Whatever that looks like for you in your marketplace, let's pick it. Let's remember what you're really, really good at, and let's do that a whole lot.
Say that again.
Remember what you're really, really good at, and let's do that a whole lot.
So important. So important.
Okay.
Right now, I've seen a lot of people say, well, I can try this and do this. Man, refine what you're really, really good at and do that at the highest level possible.
And don't second guess yourself either, because you are where you're at now, surviving because you did something really well.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right.
All right. What else? What else should we know? What words of wisdom and inspiration do you want to give to this group and our Facebook Live people?
So here's what I love about this world is that I get to have this conversation with you. And, talking about the world at hand, I'm going to sound really cheesy and corny, right?
They're used to it. They listen to me all the time.
Do you remember that song, right? The kids are our future. Great Whitney, right?
Teach them well and let them lead the way.
Right? That's where I'm at with the conversation at hand. I have my 16-year-old, by the way, who her verbiage and her thoughts on these kind of things are, she'll tell me, you know what, Mom, it's not about girls or guys. It's not about black or white. It's about humans. Right?
That next generation. Thank God for them.
So I'm banking on them a whole lot to help us navigate what we've not successfully managed to do in our own generation.
Yeah.
And so the more that I can fuel the next generation to you know, she's my little rock star. She's going to graduate high school with a dual diploma, her associates and her high school diploma at the same time.
Fantastic. It's all
because she said, you know what, Ashley, she says, why waste time? Why sit there for another 2 years if I don't have to, right?
Like you.
Just a little. And my little entrepreneur and whatever she decides on doing has enough fire in her to get done. And we need more of hers. And they're out there. They're out there. I'm watching them. They're out there.
For sure.
They just have to get organized, and they've got to understand that they need to create the system, because the system right now is broken. Fixing it is not an option. They need to create the system that's going to work for them.
Yeah.
For all of us.
All right. So books. What books would you suggest or have been great for you in the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, 10 or 15 years. We don't have that much time left, Ashley. I'll tell you what has worked for me in the last 90 days. I have dug deep into Road Less Stupid. Keith Cunningham cannot have enough of that, and put it on a bumper sticker, reverse it, and read it again. Right? And then this one I would love to share with you. I don't have this one by heart memorized. This is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse.
The Boy, the Mole. What is the...
And the Horse.
What's it about?
This is a feel good. This is to remind us of where we're at right now, because this is about inclusion. This is about 4 friends that would have never had anything in common other than the journey that they are on.
That is perfect for right now.
And so it doesn't matter what you're talking about. I have so many different little thumbtacks and book prints, and I cannot get enough of this. This is a very simple read, as you can tell by just the graphics. I mean, I'm reading a children's book to some extent that every adult should read.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Thank you for starting the conversation.
Oh, absolutely my pleasure. This has been a really fun way to start a Monday. What can and I'm going right into a Zoom class after this, so I get to go in with high energy. What can we do for you?
Be good to each other.
Simple ask. Yeah.
Easy as that. I started a Starbucks train the other day on Saturday. I paid the guy behind me. I said, we need more good stuff.
Yeah.
Not just for the holidays, right?
Oh no, it's right now.
Be good today.
Be good today. Well, hug the family.
I love you, Miss Ashley. Thank you.
Love you too. Obviously, Mega Camp is going to be digital as well, but hopefully there'll be some event that we can physically see each other within the year, at least. Safely.
Hey, listen. Yes.
I can wave. You know.
Keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you, and I will. You too. Keep changing lives.
One life at a time.
All right, dear. Have a great week.
Ashley. Be well. You too. Bye.